The neighborhood of Willow Creek was the kind of place you'd see on a postcard, and 8 rows of pastel-colored houses, each with a perfectly trimmed lawn and a mailbox that screamed middle-class bliss. But beneath the surface, it was a battlefield, and Karen Whitaker, the HOA president, was its self-appointed general. At 45, with a blonde bob sharp enough to cut glass and a smile that never reached her eyes, Karen ruled with an iron fist wrapped in a Lululemon glove. She'd patrol the streets in her golf cart, clipboard in hand, ready to slap fines on anyone who dared leave her bike on the lawn or paint their shutters an unapproved shade of beige. The neighborhood handbook, a 47-page manifesto she'd personally revised, was her Bible, and she wielded it like a weapon. I'd only been at 24 Maple Drive for a week when I became her favorite target. I'd moved to Willow Creek after a divorce that left me with a bruised ego, a chihuahua named Taco, and a lease on a modest 2-bedroom I could barely afford. My ex got the house, the savings, and apparently all my self-esteem, so I was determined to make this fresh start work. The house was nothing special, appealing paint, creaky floors, but it was mine, or at least rented, and I planned to keep my head down and rebuild. Karen had other ideas. On day 2, she was at my door, her smile tight as she handed me a citation for unauthorized non-decor because I'd left a moving box on the porch overnight. "We have standards here, Mr. Carter," she said, eyeing Taco like he was a felon. I apologized, moved the box, and figured that was that. It wasn't. Karen's campaign against me was relentless. My car, a beat-up Honda Civic, left a tiny oil spot in the driveway. A $50 fine. Taco barked at a squirrel one morning. A $75 for noise disturbance. My curtains, a perfectly inoffensive blue, were deemed non-compliant with community aesthetics because they weren't eggshell white. A $100. I tried to play nice, even attending a home meeting to plead my case. Big mistake. Karen stood at the front of the community center, her voice dripping with fake concern as she listed my violations to a room of board numbers. "We can't let one person drag down property values," she said, shooting me a look that could curdle milk. The room murmured agreement, and I slunk out, humiliated. Things escalated the morning I woke to the sound of a tow truck. My car was gone, hauled away at Karen's behest. She'd reported it as abandoned because I'd parked it on the street overnight while cleaning the garage. I spent $200 to get it back, plus a day off work I couldn't afford. My boss, already skeptical about hiring a guy fresh off a divorce, wasn't thrilled. "Keep your personal drama out of the office, Jake," he said. I gritted my teeth and paid the fine, but Karen wasn't done. A week later, I was unloading boxes at 9p.m.A. Moving is a process, okay? When blue lights flashed in my driveway. 2 cops, looking as tired as I felt, questioned me about suspicious activity. Karen had called them, claiming I was lurking around my own house. They left after I showed them my lease, but not before Karen, watching from her porch across the street, flashed that smug grin. The next day, my boss put me on probation, citing concerns about stability. I was barely hanging on, and Karen knew it. She wasn't just enforcing rules, she was sabotaging my life. I started avoiding her, taking Taco for walks at dawn to dodge her golf cart patrols. But she was everywhere, her eyes glinting with glee every time she handed me a new citation. Neighbors started crossing the street to avoid me, like I was the problem. I heard whispers at the mailbox who Karen had spun me as the neighborhood troublemaker, the guy who couldn't follow simple rules. I was drowning in fines, stress, and the sinking feeling that I'd never belonged here. I considered breaking my lease, but I had nowhere else to go. Then, out of nowhere, a lifeline. A letter arrived from a lawyer in Chicago. My Uncle Ray, a distant figure I hadn't seen in years, had passed away. He'd been a quiet real estate investor, and apparently, I was his only heir. The letter listed a portfolio of properties, including a holy hell of most of the houses on Maple Drive, including Karen's. I was her landlord. I sat on my couch, Taco snoring beside me, and read the letter 3 times to make sure I wasn't hallucinating. Uncle Ray had owned half the block, renting them out through a management company I'd never heard of. Now, it was mine. The power dynamic flipped overnight, and I felt a spark of something I hadn't felt in months, Control. I didn't confront Karen right away. I wanted to savor it. I spent a week digging into the leases, the whole bylaws, and every citation she'd ever issued. Her own record wasn't spotless. Her petunias were a shade too purple, her mailbox had a dent, and her car sometimes parked a hair over the line. She'd skated by because she was the one writing the rules. Not anymore. I showed up at the next home meeting, a folder tucked under my arm, and took a seat in the back. Karen was in her element, lecturing a neighbor about untrimmed hedges. When I raised my hand, "Excuse me," I said, standing, "I'd like to introduce myself. Jake Carter, new owner of 12 properties on Maple Drive, including 22, 23, and 25. I paused, letting it sink in. Karen's face went white as her clipboard slipped to the floor. The room was dead silent. Karen tried to laugh, a brittle sound that fooled no one. "That's a broken bar impossible," she stammered. I held up the lawyer's letter and a stack of lease agreements, passing them to the treasurer for verification. Whispers spread as Karen's eyes darted around, searching for an escape. "As your landlord," I said calmly, "I'm here to ensure everyone follows the rules, starting with you, Karen." I listed her violations of petunias, mailbox, parking. Each one met with gasps from the neighbors she terrorized. Her mouth opened and closed like a fish, but no words came out. For the first time, Karen Whitaker was speechless. I didn't fire her from the home. That would have been too easy. Instead, I became her shadow, enforcing every rule she'd ever used against me. Her petunias were ripped out the next week, a $50 fine. Her car's tire crossed the line one morning, a $75. Her mailbox, deemed unsightly for that, and a $100. I didn't invent new rules, I just followed her playbook to the letter. Neighbors started whispering again, but this time, it was about her. Karen's getting a taste of her own medicine, I overheard at the mailbox. She tried to fight back, sending me a rambling email about community spirit, but I replied with a scanned copy of her lease, highlighting the clause about landlord discretion. She begged for a meeting, her voice shaking on the phone, but I kept it professional. "Rules are rules, Karen," I said, echoing her favorite line. By spring, she was gone. Her house went up for sale, and I approved a new tenant, a quiet couple who planted approved petunias and kept their car spotless. The neighborhood didn't change much, a still postcard perfecta, but the air felt lighter. Neighbors waved at me now, some even thanking me for reining in the hose reign of terror. I didn't gloat, but every time I walked Taco past Karen's old house, I let myself smile. She tried to sabotage my life, but in the end, I'd turned her own game against her, and it felt damn good.